The standard form of a linear equation. The standard form of linear equations. All of them shall be in this format. The M stands for the gradient, and the C stands for the starting point. If I have an equation that says, that's too small one, and you had to plot this specific graph in the x values of -1, 2, -1, 3, you have your table. You have the x-axis, which is always horizontal. You have the y-axis, which is always vertical. In your table, the top row is always your x-axis, and the bottom row is always your y-axis. So we just fill it in. When x is 0, what is the y value that belongs to 0? That is correct. So, y value is 2 times x value is 0, and you add 1. So your answer is 1. 1. At x is 1, what belongs to y? Y is 2 times 1 plus 1. Your answer is 2 plus 1, and that becomes 3. Y value is 3. Yes. It's an equation. That's a table that belongs to the equation. When x is 0, what is y? I use this equation to solve that problem. X is 0, so y is 1 here. And then follows, when x is 2, I know in advance my y is 5. But guess what? Without doing the equation, solving it, I know already what the answer to -1 is. I'm not even going to multiply or do anything. I already know the answer. The answer is negative 1. I already know. Teacher, how do you know? Simple. In the standard formula, which I gave you, M stands for the gradient. Now, what is the gradient? The gradient is the number that which the y value increases or decreases, because you can have a negative gradient, you can have a negative, increase or decrease with the same amount. So, look closely. From 1 to 3, what happens? I add 2. If I go from 3 to 5, I add 2. So you can imagine if I go from here to there, from x is minus 1 to x is 0, I also add 2. And this is what is called a linear equation. How do I know it's a linear equation? The increase or decrease stays the same. The gradient is 2. So what does that mean? It increases with 2 every single time. So if I were to place 3 here, my answer will most certainly be 7. Because the gradient is 2. That's how I know. This is how you know it's a linear equation. Formula, it's always the same. Now to draw the graph, yes. Sorry? This is given to you, and this is also given to you. This means these are the x values. So you place it in the table. It's given to you. Here. They're given to you. Minus 1, 0, 1, 2. This is for the x value. This is for the y value. You have negative 1 in x. You also have negative 1 in y. That's why there's 2 negative 1s. I can also place 1 here. You can say, why there are 2 1s? X is 0. I don't understand the question. Minus 1, 0. Where is minus 1, 0? The x values. The graph shows 1. I didn't fill the graph yet. I didn't fill it in yet. It's empty. It's blank. This graph is blank. It's a blank graph. I didn't fill it in. So, plot the graph of this particular linear equation. You have the table. Before drawing any graph, you need to draw a table. Here it is. But teacher, in order to place coordinates in a graph, you need coordinates. Teacher, I don't have coordinates. And I would say, yes, you do. A coordinate is composed out of an x value and a y value. If you look at the table, you have an x value that belongs to a y value. So the first coordinate is negative 1. -1. That's the first coordinate. This x value belongs to that y value. So the first coordinate is -1, -1. Which is here. There it is. The second coordinate is 0, 1. Here it is. The third coordinate is 1, 3, which is here. The next coordinate is 2, 5, which is here. Sorry? What's at 1? Yes. X is 0 and y is 1. Here is 0. When you have the x values, this is x. So you move in the x axis first. So x -1 means I'm moving in the x axis. Where is -1? It's on this side. So I move in the x value, which is -1, and then I have the y value. It's also -1. So I need to go to the y value here. Here's where I'm at. You move always in the x-axis first, and then you move in the y-axis. So 0, 1, where am I moving? I'm moving nowhere in the x-axis. This is 0. I'm staying here. I'm not moving. And then in the y value, I move 1. There it is. For 2, 5, you move 2 in the x-axis, and then you move 5 in the y-axis. 2, 5. And once you are finished, you take your pencil and your ruler, and you draw a straight line through the coordinates. As I said earlier, chapter 9 gives the most points. If you, or when you have to draw a graph, drawing a line through the coordinates gives you a point. Writing down the y-axis and the x-axis gives you a point. Yes. No, it doesn't always give you a gradient. That's why we have to continue. This is part 0.1. An equation is given, linear equation is given. You have to plot it, not always. As I said, chapter 9, CXC can come in any number of ways. The most points are here. So they can either say graph it, don't graph it, write it down, write a table. What is the coordinates? They can go in any number of ways. So when you look at page 208, there are 4 tables. And only looking at these 4 tables, I already know which is a linear equation. I already know. 2 are linear equations and 2 aren't. Just by looking at them, I know. No. Yes, these four. The C on the right hand side doesn't belong to 8, it belongs to 9. So only these four. Okay. Not the one on the right. So not this one. Only these four. A, B, C, D. 2 are linear equations and 2 aren't. Yes? Correct. A and B are linear equations, C and D aren't. How do I know? Because the increase of A is always 22. 22 with 22, 44. 44, 22, 66. 66, 22, 88. That's a linear equation. B, 50 to 62 is at 12. 62 to 74 at 12. 64 to 86 at 12. So that's a linear equation. The increase is always the same. It's a linear equation. C and D, the increase changes. So if the increase changes, it is not a linear equation anymore. Chapter 9, the easiest chapter there is. Whew. So, standard form of a linear equation, do not forget it. You need to memorize it. Do not forget it. M stands for the gradient. The gradient of y equals 2x plus 1, the gradient is not 2x. The gradient is 2. Do not make that mistake. The gradient is not 2x. The gradient is 2, just a number. So what's next, teacher? Is this everything? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately, this is too easy for you. So we have to continue challenging your mind, evolving the mind, make the neurons work, create new brain cells. I have a linear equation of line F. At chapter 9, CXC is very picky on how it is written. So do not write it the way you want to. Write it the way you should write it. So when you see something like this, or sometimes it is written, oops. There are different ways of writing it. Different ways. When we go to chapter 8, you will see. At the moment, you will only see this form. At the moment. When you go to chapter 8, we will see the other 3 or 4 forms you can write. The same thing. The only thing difference is this changes. This here changes. For the rest, nothing changes. It's no difference. Very good question. Teacher, what is the F? Line F. Because if I give you a graph, as I stated, I'm not sure if I told you guys yes or no. In this particular exercise, it's nice to have different colored pens. Or, because you see something like this, and if I do not indicate, oh, this is F, you would have a problem if all of them were the same color. All of them were blue. So having different colored pens, pencils, helps you a lot in this particular chapter. No, this is an example. If there were more, all of them would have numbers. So this would be G, and this would be H, and this would be A. So you would know. If it asks you that, you can have different equations, F, G, R, and then they say, draw all of them in a graph. Remember, this chapter can go any ways, can go sideways, up, down, left, right, any possible way it can come at you. So you have line F is given by y equals 3x plus 1. What is the gradient of line F? Simple. The gradient, no, that's it. These come in CXC exams and regular exams. What's the gradient? 1 point, just by writing what you see. The next thing is parallel lines. And then we shall stop at parallel lines. What is a parallel line? If you look at the floor, and if you look at these squares, these lines are parallel to each other. See? They're parallel. The red ones are also parallel to each other. So parallel lines. Parallel lines will never intersect. Now, what is an intersection? When they meet, this is an intersection. They will cross each other. Parallel lines will never intersect. But what does that have to do with linear equations, teacher? Thank you for asking. When we have linear equations and parallel lines, you will have line F, here it is, and the exercise will say line Q is parallel to F, or it can state it in a different way. It will say this. That means Q is parallel to F. Depending how much time the person who made the exam has, they will either write it down for you, or they will write it in code for you. Q is parallel to F. And then they ask, what is the gradient of line Q? It's a question just like that. It's given to you. There's line F. What is the gradient of line Q? Oh. Q, or the gradient of Q, like that. The gradient of Q, that is correct, of Q is 3. Why is it 3? Because Q is parallel to F. The same way, they can ask you, what is the gradient of Q? They can also say, the gradient of Q is 3. Why? And they ask you, explain why the gradient of Q is also 3. Correct. So you have to write this. Remember, chapter 9 can come in any number of ways. Any number of ways. No, you can write both. That or this. It can come in any number of ways. So they can give you the answer and say, okay, state why is this the answer? Chapter 9, the most points. So they will ask anything and everything. And then to finish off, line Q is parallel to F and goes through the coordinate of what? goes to the coordinate of 0, 5. Write down the equation of line Q. No, it's given to you. Line Q is parallel to F and goes to the coordinate of A, which is 0, 5. Write down the equation of line Q. Teacher, how do I do that? Easy. Extremely easy. This comes in paper ones, like this. They give you an equation, and then they say another one is parallel to the one they gave you, and then goes through this point. If it has the same gradient, you already know it's 3x, oops, of course. And it goes through where? 0, 5. So what do? Place the coordinate in the equation. This is the x value. This is the y value. What is the y value? 5. 5 equals? Starting point and what?
In the equation, the C.
Yes, always. Yes.
And the coordinate 0, 5 is for Q or for Q?
Is for Q. Q goes through 0, 5. So 5 equals 3 times, what is the x value? 0 plus C. So what is the C? 5 equals C. So what is the equation? The coordinates. What is the first coordinate? X value. Here it is. The second coordinate, what is it? The y value. You just fill it in. The starting point. You have to figure it out. Yes, do not forget. The most points come from this chapter. It can come in any number of ways. Yes.